you feel that? Do you feel that? Oh, shit.
Wow!
Do you feel that?
Oops. I left it on loop. I'm still getting used to this program. Hello, everybody. I have a very cool, man, I can't believe the level of professionalism I'm dealing with today. And it's all me, by the way. Every bad thing that happens today is my fault. Okay, I'm really excited about who my guest is. His name is Seth. You might know him from a little channel called Transcendent philosophy. I don't know why I stuttered on that. I always think transcendental philosophy for some reason, and then it reminds me of this weird song by Alvin Band about the Ninja Turtles. I don't know why. That's what I think of when I think of his channel. But okay, I'm going to add Seth to the stream. I've been very excited to talk to him for a long time. Hello, Seth. How are you, man?
Hey, Cody. Glad to be here.
This has been kind of a long time coming. I actually knew about you before I knew that we had like mutual friends.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was on a road trip from St. George, and this video kept popping up on my thing that was like the hard problem, like solving the hard problem of and I couldn't not click on it. And it's so, dude, your content is so smart.
Thank you.
It's so smart. I love it. I hope that the people who watch this, if they haven't heard of you before, I hope that you become a staple of their YouTube algorithm, because I really enjoy your stuff, man. Okay, I'm sorry. I just talked for actually kind of a minute. Tell us about your channel. Tell us about why you started it. Introduce yourself. I kind of tried to introduce you, but is there anything you would change about my introduction?
No, yeah, that was a great introduction. Yeah, I started Transcendent Philosophy probably 2-3 years ago. I kind of had a existential crisis in my life that kind of shifted me in the direction of becoming obsessed with philosophy.
Okay.
And that was kind of what triggered it. And
so what was, I mean, I have to ask now. So walk me through your existential crisis. Was it a religious background thing? Like, give me all the juicy goss.
Sure. So on my channel, there is a video called The Philosophy of Suffering. I believe that's the title. And that goes in depth on kind of my existential crisis. But to a large degree, it was physical illness, it was disability, it was chronic pain, it was losing my job and my career and relationships and my entire life crashing because of a spinal disease caused by scoliosis, curvature, deformity of the spine. And even now I have to sit in a very reclined position because of this illness. And when your world is crashing down in every dimension, everything you care about is being ripped away from you, and you're being tortured by reality, that really, the problem of evil and the meaning crisis, all of this stuff becomes very visceral. It's like, why am I here? Why am I being tortured? What makes life worth it? Why am I doing this?
It's such a, I mean, the way that you're even phrasing the question is already, it's so many steps ahead from the normal question, because a lot of people say, like, if there's no God, or if there's no this, or there's no afterlife, then how could there be a meaning to life? And what you're describing here is, no, there's obviously meaning. And in my case right now, it's pain.
Yeah, exactly.
What is the meaning that I could have that would outweigh the pain? What could be the net positive meaning of life? Because anybody who says life is meaningless, it's like, well, no, like things are, you know what I mean? Like, things are happening all the time. It's not a neutral phenomenon. But the way that you're framing it is, okay, bad things are happening to me, but how can I find ways to make the meaning good instead of the meaning be bad. And
Exactly.
how many years ago did you say this was?
So 2019, it was getting worse, and then I got laid off in 2020 because of it. So it kind of
Okay.
peaked between 2020 and 2019.
Okay. And from where you are now to where you were then, I mean, this could be the whole episode, man.
Yeah, it could.
This could be the whole thing. So walk me
Yeah.
through this, like end of 2019. Be as vague or descriptive as you would like to be, but walk me through your thought process as things are starting to change dramatically and your life is going in a very different direction than you thought it would.
Sure. Yeah. So I did go through this in depth on my other episode, The Philosophy of Suffering, but I can kind of give kind of a short and sweet version of that episode, which was, like when you have lots of spinal pain, gravity is causing the spinal pain. Often one of the most comfortable positions is lying down, like face down, and then the gravity is pulling your spine downwards to help loosen it up. So for 2019, 2020, very often, like I come home from work exhausted. I don't have energy to cook dinner. I don't have energy to do anything. I just turn on YouTube and lie face down on my couch and just decompress for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've got all this like cortisol, all of this adrenaline stress from the day. So I'm like, I'm angry because of my suffering. I'm in a state of hypervigilance. And so I'm just like absorbing philosophy content through YouTube because that's the only thing I could do for 3 hours a day.
Oh man.
And so one of the people on YouTube who really struck a chord with me was Jordan Peterson, because he talks about suffering a lot. He talks about meaning and some of these religious concepts and how it interfaces with suffering and meaning. And so I felt like he was onto something, and like maybe he had some of the clues that could help me transcend my suffering, right? And so one of the hard things about my situation at that time was I was developing a very toxic ideology about the universe. Like, part of this ties into my faith crisis, which happened earlier in 2014.
Okay.
I don't know if we should jump back to do that or go straight into this. What do you think?
We should do like a weird Tarantino thing where we start in the middle and then get kind of close to the end and then jump to the beginning.
Okay.
So you discover Jordan Peterson and you're starting to feel, do you feel like this might be loaded language, so maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you feel like he stopped you from going down this path, this very dangerous ideological path, or what was the path that you were headed down?
Yeah, I think he did help me shift directions ideologically and perhaps spiritually, if that feels like a right word to use.
Yeah.
So I was developing this ideology of like, either God is evil or he doesn't exist, right? I had my faith crisis, and so I'm in this state of, it's like there's no good God because I've had too much bad luck for that to be possible. Yes. So it's either he's evil or he's not real. There. Yeah. The problem of evil was really visceral for my faith crisis. So I'm getting tortured on a daily basis, and it sucks.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, if there is a God and he's like watching this happen for like no reason, he is are we allowed to cuss on this channel?
Oh, dude, fucking swear, dude.
He is an asshole if he's watching this happen. He's got all this power. He's like, I just want to torture you until you repent and return to church, my little minion that I must manipulate into obedience. I'm like, dude, this is not the way you get converts. This is
bad. You're a terrible missionary for your own self, God.
Exactly. So I was listening to Jordan Peterson's biblical lectures, and he talks about like art and the meaning of art and the philosophy
Yeah.
of art, and how art in and of itself, it like reveals meaning. Like there's like
Yeah.
a value hierarchy hidden within art. It's like, oh, this art is meaningful to me. It's got there's something valuable about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he encouraged people to look for pieces of art that resonate with them, hang them up in their house, and let that be a type of meditation on meaning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I tried that. I did a meditation. I first did a meditation on what types of principles seem important to me, right? Like I had left religion, and religion gives you all these principles that are meaningful. I'm like,
Yeah.
now I need to reinvent my own values and figure out what's meaningful and find art that embodies that meaning that I care about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that led me on a path to getting an answer to my problem.
Interesting. So what was this piece of art what was the first piece of art that you bought, or
So
that you put in your house?
yeah, I didn't buy like I kind of just like grabbed random art on the internet that resonated and printed it out and built my own thing, right?
Nice.
And so that gave me the freedom to like Google anything that kind of clicked.
Yeah.
And one of the pieces of art that really helped for some reason, it was this image of Zeus, right?
Okay.
And it's kind of got that Heavenly Father vibe, the white curly hair, but he's like super buff, super chiseled. And he just looks really angry, condescending, judgmental. He's like, it looks like he's just like looking down on creation with disgust. Like, y'all don't deserve my help. That kind of a vibe.
Right. I can see why that resonated with you.
Yes. That was my vision of God. And so every day I'm getting tortured, and I just look up at that piece of art. I'm like, you asshole, you're just watching me suffer doing nothing. And he's just staring back like, I don't give an F about you, right?
Yeah.
And so we're just having like this kind of a antagonistic psychic dialogue back and forth, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Trying to process the problem of evil, because that's what I was dealing with. And so what happened was, I think part of Jordan Peterson's lectures, he talked about like epistemic humility, and I always appreciate epistemic humility anyway.
Yeah.
And so I had locked my mind into this ideology that the universe is evil, God's evil, there's so much suffering everywhere, everything sucks. And I was like, I finally had like this light bulb click. I'm like, maybe I'm blind to something. Maybe my ideology is off track. Maybe this is a bad way to go mentally. Maybe I need to rethink things. And so I kind of had this moment with Zeus where I was like asking Zeus, if I'm off base, please help me to figure out a better way to view the universe, because this is freaking frustrating. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's profound. That fits right into a conversation I've been having with a friend this week. I have younger siblings. Yeah, do you have younger siblings?
Oh yeah, I got 4 younger.
Okay. So you know how sometimes your younger siblings are dumbasses?
Sure.
Yeah. You know how it's a kind of weird question, but you know how that happens?
As politely as I can answer that question.
Yeah, don't let them watch this. They're all going to be like, you asshole. No, I was thinking about the time of my life when I was a dumbass, which was yesterday, but also like way worse, like 4 years ago,
Sure.
And I'm thinking about this character arc that we all kind of go through. And you just perfectly described like the first 2 steps of the hero's journey that I was talking about with my friend the other day. And so far I can think of 3, but I'm sure there are more. There's person who thinks they know everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then that person they become they become wise in a very like Socrates way, a very Socratic way, and they realize that they don't know anything.
Yes.
And they sit there for a while.
Mhm.
And then but nothing happens. They become an egg, they become a seed, they become a blank slate, they are a nothing. And then suddenly there's this mental switch that happens, and they say, I may not know anything right now, but if I read and I focus and I try, I bet I could learn anything. And that's when you explode into adulthood. That's when it all, that's when the seed receives like nourishment and water and the sun and all that good stuff, and suddenly it's like, you're not a dumbass anymore, which is like the highest compliment that I could give. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
Yeah.
but it begs the question, like, for that person who's in the stage of I know everything, or they're somewhere in between I know everything and I know nothing, how do you help someone like that? What advice could you possibly give to them? And I don't know, because sometimes it's that epistemic humility that you're talking about. You have to come to the realization that you actually know nothing. And
Right.
that's what made Socrates wise, but that's what gives you the right. That's how you give yourself permission to say, I can learn. And boom, that's a dangerous thought. As soon as you realize, like, I can learn anything, you are unstoppable. And so I just, you were painting that out so well. And I've been thinking about that all week. And I just thought that was brilliant. Christopher, this is Chris, right? Should I not say that before the crow's nest? I think you guys have been on a live together, right? With on a Varveki video.
Yeah, on 2 of them.
Yeah. Yeah, he just says knowing less and less about more and more. Yeah. So anyway, I didn't mean to like cut in right there, but now I'm interested. At what point? So you're watching hours and hours of YouTube.
Yep.
You're watching Jordan Peterson. You realize that you may have gotten something wrong, which could be the reason that your worldview is so dark.
Exactly.
Is that a fair way to characterize that?
Very fair. Very fair.
Okay. Right. So then you're looking at Zeus. You're resonating with this angry Zeus,
Exactly.
So where did you go from there? Did you start to say maybe there is no Zeus? Did you start to what was your train of thought after that?
Yeah. So I had this like epistemically humble prayer with Zeus. And the very next day I had what could value, like from my Mormon perspective, I had the equivalent of revelation the very next day. And the revelation was answer the question. It was emotionally curative, and it completely rebuilt my ideology in seconds. So it was
what was that prayer like?
It was a complete phase shift in my brain. And so, yeah, at the risk of seeming like supporting the idea that God is real, like just to add a little clarity to this part.
Yeah.
So I had my faith crisis in when I was 25.
Okay.
So I had kind of I've had a lot of like supernatural spiritual experiences in my life. So like my faith in God's existence was like at 100% for like, it was like extremely close to 100 for decades of my early life. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
After the faith crisis, it started reducing by 20% every year.
Okay.
So I was
and the faith crisis was what, 2014, you said, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
So I go from 100% to 80%, 80% to 60%, 60% to 40 to 20. So at this point in my life during this meditation, and I'm like around 5%, right? I'm pretty close to an atheist, right? Or I'm probably an atheist. But that 5% is just enough to piss you off. It's like, if there's a 5% chance that some all-powerful guy's watching this, I'm pissed. You know what I mean? But so I had this revelatory experience the next day, which further confirmed to me in retrospect that revelation, it's just brain phenomena. I think I kind of think that revelation is kind of built unconsciously, like part of the brain, it's building ideas. And so I'm constantly pondering this stuff. I'm constantly working with Zeus, trying to figure this out. while I
Mhm.
sleep. I sleep for 8 hours, and my unconscious is trying to
Yeah.
figure out a new idea. And the next day, poof, the unconscious delivers it to me. I'm like, oh, wow, this is right. That's kind of how I
Yes.
view it
Yes.
materialistically.
No, I think I've described it in very similar ways actually, because I think if you simply personify whatever you want to call reality that you're dealing with, that you're bouncing ideas off of within your own head, I think human beings, we don't have a choice but to personify things generally. We personify society as, this wise old judge who, like, time is of the essence, but he's going to respect us, but don't mess with him. And we personify God in that way. And sometimes when these nuggets drop into our brains, we feel like, I mean, I know it's a logical fallacy, but we do the whole, like, well, this had to have come from somewhere and it must have had intent with it, you know. And as
Sure.
soon as there's intent, as soon as there's a telos, you can't
Yes.
help but say there is a being that wanted me to know this. And whether that being is real or psychological, it actually doesn't make a difference, because it still drops it into your brain. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
so there's this pragmatism with the way that we react with the belief of God, kind of, where it suddenly doesn't matter anymore if it's Zeus or what it is. It's just like the information is coming in. I don't know what to tell you. It's coming
Sure.
from somewhere, clearly. And and that's an old enough human story, but yeah, I'm right there with you. So what was this I mean, what was this revelation? What did you feel?
Right.
What was told to you?
So, in order to understand the revelation, I need to contextualize it. In the past, during this period of having a dark ideology, like, I'm suffering, I'm like, just going to the grocery store is like a trial, because like my spine can barely handle all of this activity. You know what I mean? And so every time I went shopping, it would like enrage me, because all of these products on the shelves, they were symbols of suffering. Like, I was viewing everything through the lens of suffering. What is food? It means we suffer from hunger. What is water? It means we suffer from thirst. What are pillows? It means we suffer from gravity on our necks. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Everything seemed like a symbol of the power of evil mocking us. It was like, no matter what you do, you're always going to suffer. Resistance is futile. You live in an evil universe. That was like, I was just so mad that the universe was designed to have so much suffering in every dimension, every way. And what happened after that prayer, the next day, I go shopping, and like instantly, when I'm looking at the products, I no longer see a system of suffering behind the product. I saw something else. For the first time, I saw systems of love behind the products.
That's so
And
interesting.
it was kind of like a download of a new perspective. And it like instantly, like, I was instantly moved to tears at connecting love into the process. It was like, yes, all of these products are because of systems of suffering. But the reason these products exist is because of a system of love is trying to combat that system of suffering. And then it like I like almost instantly deduced a new conclusion, which is love justifies the existence of suffering, because love is a type of beauty that surpasses the badness of the suffering. When we have an option to choose, should we let our loved one suffer or should we try to help our loved one? We choose to suffer on behalf of our loved ones because love is a more transcendent value to us than the avoidance of suffering. And so what that means to me is that if I can tap into the value of love, then I can justify my suffering. And maybe suffering knows no bounds, but maybe love knows no bounds either. And if you can just tap into enough love, that can justify even the upper limits of suffering.
I mean, yeah, you're dropping truth bombs here. So can you think of a this is where it suddenly becomes so profound. You said if you could, you would choose to suffer on behalf of your loved ones.
Right.
And I don't see a drama where that is played out more completely and perfectly than Christianity itself.
Yes.
It's such a
Yes.
profound, yes. It's such a,
Yes.
it's, you know what I mean? It's played
Yes.
out perfectly. And so why wouldn't that have some sort of archetypal like ringing of truth to the people who
Right.
feel that? Because we know that it's true when we do it for our children. We know that
Sure.
it's true when we do it for our parents. We know it's, you
Mhm.
know, to a certain degree, it's true for everyone we interact with. I always say that there's kind of a pyramid of people that you have to interact with.
Mhm.
And the people at the top of the pyramid are the people that are your closest loved ones. And then it separates out until the people on the bottom of the pyramid are people who live across the world and you'll never interact with. And the people in the middle of the pyramid are the people who, you know, you drive past in traffic or walk next to at the store. You know, there's that level of interaction, but it's more separated. And to a degree, suffering on behalf of all of them to the amount that you can, or the amount that's necessary, or the amount that feels reciprocal for their relation on the pyramid, is something that I think most people would just do out of some instinct. And Christianity grabs that and just pinches that nerve, you know, and just like, yes,
absolutely.
and let me articulate it for you like this. The most perfect, the most like undeserving of the suffering will do it. You know what I mean? It just puts it to extremes. I also wanted to note, and I want to hear what your thoughts are on this. So before you saw the things at the grocery store as, you know, they were mocking you. And then suddenly you went from, they're not mocking me, they're trying to answer the mocking that is happening. They're trying to add love to the mocking. And what I find so interesting about that, because we were just talking about how we can't help but personify things, at no point do you describe these things as neutral, just pieces of matter. They had intent. You know what I mean? They had a goal. And at one point it was a mean goal, and at the other point it was a good goal. But human beings, I'll say this again, I don't think that we cannot personify the world around us that we interact with. It has to be a part of the structure that we build reality out of. And so it's just like, I don't know, this is great. And we have Tarantino'd, by the way. We started in the middle, and now we're hopping back to the faith crisis. I knew this would happen. So okay, wait. So I have a couple comments that I want to get to because these are pretty good. Just like we can experience a phantom limb, we can experience a phantom god. I like that phrase. Phantom god is kind of a cool band name. If I ever start one, I think Phantom God would be the name. Let's see. And sensed presence, as we all have innate neural network or a mother. Or a mother from when we were a helpless baby. The brain is amazing. Yes. Thuggy, shout out to you. You're awesome. It is how we look at the situation we are in, as we are the sum of our tears. Too much, the best of us is washed away, but to little and nothing can grow. Wait, did I read that last part right? I don't think I did. Too much, the best of us is washed away, but too little and nothing can grow. I might be.
I think he's saying that, like, your trials, like if you have too large of a trial, it'll just destroy you. But if your trial is too small, you don't grow.
Yes.
You got to get that sweet spot for growth.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Okay. And then Steven here. I've had Steven on my channel before. That was a fun conversation. Yes, I am describing the atonement. Now, are we saying that it happened, or are we saying it doesn't matter if it happened because it's a good enough story that we can psychologically deal with it? Yes, I am describing the atonement. Do you have any where do we go from here? So this was when you had this brain shift. Tell me, was this was in the height of your pain, right? So this was well after your faith crisis.
Yeah. The faith crisis 5-6 years earlier.
Okay, so what was it? What was the little nugget, or what was the little I often think that cognitive dissonance, or some sort of mosquito flying into your brain and just annoying you, is kind of the start of everybody's faith crisis. What was that mosquito for you? What itched you that you couldn't stop thinking about until I think critical thinking is kind of the answer to cognitive dissonance. You have to you have these two worldviews that can't coexist, and you have to break one of them, like resetting a limb, and you have to say okay, this is the worldview now, So what was that initial mosquito for you?
So I don't know if I could attribute it to just a simple mosquito. I think that a better way to describe what was bothering me, at least initially, there was kind of a buildup and then the faith crisis. So talking about the buildup, I think I was subconsciously or semi-consciously applying a scientific method to my faith, right? So, for example, in math, you've got a function, and so y equals mx plus b, and so I was kind of applying this predictive model to my faith. For example, tithing. If you pay tithing, you get the blessings of heaven, right?
Right.
So I had this idea. I don't think anyone ever taught this to me, but I kind of had this idea on a graph. The more you do for God, the bigger your blessings. And so you could plot a graph, and then I could experiment with my own behavior. I could say, okay, I'm going to do this much and see what my blessings are. I can increase it, see what my blessings are. And so I was kind of doing this type of experiment. I was going to the nth degree. I paid double tithing for 2 years. I'm okay, financial blessings.
Right.
Here they come.
Right. I hear that's called tithing seeding. Did you know that?
Seeding. I've never heard of that.
It was Wendy Nelson a couple years ago gave a talk. I mostly stay unplugged from the stuff going on in the Mormon world, but this was a couple years ago when I still paid attention. And she had gone down to Africa, and she had given a talk about how she quoted some old story where this man was talking to his bishop, and he told his bishop that he was paying tithing on the income that he wanted next year. So the idea was, if I pay, if I'm only making $100 a week, then what I need to do to increase that is pay $20 a week of tithing, because then my income will double, because God will bless me. It's a very common idea. I know what you mean. It's not like anybody really teaches it until, she taught it explicitly. But then of course it was a teaching. But you just kind of pick up these ideas that, God blesses us when we, when you do what I say, but when you do not what I say, you have no promise, or however that goes.
Exactly,
we start to correlate these things. And so I can totally see where you got this from and how you were putting it into practice.
Right. And I was trying to do it with as many of the commandments as I could, and the results were the opposite of expected. It's I do as best as I can, and everything blows up in my face. I do as best as I can over here, blows up in my face. Everything was constantly blowing up in my face. I'm there's a problem here. The model isn't working. Prediction, observation, it's not lining up.
Yeah. And then you get the insanity is doing the same thing multiple times and expecting different results. So at some point you kind of have to say, all right, my model isn't working. It's time now to look at the model, which sounds that sounds very similar to what I did. So in what ways did you start to kind of test your model?
So one of the problems is I had so I kind of distanced myself from Mormonism because I was getting pissed off at this model problem.
Okay.
But then I had a prayer, and it got answered in a really good way. And so I went back to church, reactivated. Then I got married. And then that was the big trigger, is that I had a very specific vision for what I was hoping for in a wife, in a marriage, in a future. And I was constantly like discussing with God, this is kind of my vision, and hoping for God's guidance. And I felt like I had God's guidance to get into this marriage, like multiple dimensions of guidance, like Holy Ghost, like dreams of the future, like everything was lining up. This is the girl, go for it. And then that marriage blows up in my face. I'm like, wait a second. Like, out of anything I've been positive is from God, I was positive that this is from God. And it's obviously blown up in my face, like usual.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the breaking point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you described that there were always like, it was a slow build up, and then so what was the fallout of that? What was your next 2 months like?
Which 2 months?
So after the marriage, or did you get married, or were you engaged trying to get married? And you don't have to answer any of the questions that you don't want to answer, but after that fell apart, what was what was the rebuilding process like? How long were you like, I'm not getting out of bed? Because we've all been there, and just like, yeah, I think I'm gonna stay here for a week or two.
Yeah. So the simple, quick way to describe it was, she was different she was a different person from who I thought she was before we were married. And so I knew very on that I had messed up. Like, this is not what I signed up for. And I was like, but I tried to endure it. I got constant like reassurance from the Holy Ghost. Keep trying. This is what you're supposed to do. So I persevered, but I just got more and more depressed through the marriage, because I was like, this is not what I wanted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like God and my mental health were completely opposed to each other. Like, follow God and sacrifice your mental health, or preserve your mental health and give up God, was kind of the dichotomy. I was being forced into this trolley problem. Like, the longer the marriage went on, the worse I felt about it. And it was forcing my hand. And there was a point where I decided I want to get divorced. And I had a very strong, legit, like from a Mormon perspective, a very legitimate revelation. I called my dad to get advice on the divorce. Like, I was 95% sure I wanted to do it, but I had 5%, I just want to hear someone with wisdom, see if they confirm or see what they have to say, right? While the phone's ringing, I hear a voice from God, and the voice says, "You must follow your father's advice." And I was like, "Oh, that's not good," because usually I disagree with my dad. I was like, this is probably not going to go in a good direction. So my dad was basically like, you need to sacrifice your happiness to preserve your slot in the celestial kingdom. This marriage is what you need to ensure you go to heaven, and celestial kingdom is more important than your happiness. So just focus on that. That was his, and I didn't tell him that I got divine confirmation. He was just giving me his perspective.
He was just off the cuff in it.
He was off the cuff, and my heart, like, the longer he talked, the more my heart sunk into my chest. I'm like, no more happiness, no more happiness. Like, and like, it felt like a legit revelation. So I followed it, and for 6 months, like, I felt soulless. I felt like there was no meaning to my life. Like, I wasn't fulfilling my dreams. I was just a soulless pawn doing God's will, sacrificing my own desires. Like, I was miserable, and it finally clicked for me that this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, when you say this doesn't make any sense, was it like, did your brain go directly to, I always thought it was weird that like Joseph Smith translated a language that doesn't exist. Like, did your mind just start to like attack all of the logical problems that you had always had? Or what, like, in what way did your mind just say like, yeah, this doesn't make any sense anymore? Or was it God can't be this type of God? Yeah, talk to me.
I'll tell you the exact line that kind of paradigm shifted me at this point in time.
Okay.
I was taking my wife to California. It's a long drive, 6-hour drive. And so I'm just kind of meditating as I drive. And I had an almost revelatory sentence pop into my mind. But this type of revelation was contra revelation, in the sense that I heard the words, "What if God is wrong?" I'm like, for 25 years, I've never allowed myself to even consider that as a possibility.
Right.
And then for the first time, it was like a light clicked. I'm like, maybe you should allow yourself to think that, because you're pretty miserable right now. You know what I mean?
Yes. Oh man, I can relate on so many levels with you. My story, very similar, and yet kind of the incitement event was the opposite, where it was like, I knew that I wanted to marry my wife, but I knew that in order to do that, I had to give up the idea of a temple marriage, and like I couldn't have both things.
Oh.
And we had tried to break up. We broke up while I was on my mission. We stayed apart when I got home for another year, until we had a mutual friend who was getting married, and she just said like, look, I'm inviting both of you to my wedding, and it can be awkward at the wedding, or you can like call each other and get the awkwardness over with, but like, you both have to be there. We're all very close. And so we decided, you know what, let's see each other before the wedding. Let's get it all out of the way. And the wedding was a couple months away. By the time the wedding came around, we were practically engaged. In fact, we might have been engaged. And then it was just like the dark night of the soul, where it's like, okay, I might be giving up all of this for her, but I know that I can't have it with her, and I've been without her, and I can't do that again. And so, we were apart for, maybe 3 years isn't that long of a time, but like it had been confirmed to me in our time together and our time apart that this was the person for me. You know what I mean? And so it was the same thing where like, for you, it was realizing that things had to go a different direction. And for me, it was realizing that, nope, I'm making this decision, and I'll let the consequences follow. And then it was suddenly like, none of this really made sense anyways. Like suddenly I gave myself permission to think like, what if it is wrong? And I find a lot of people when it's not working for them anymore, that's when, you have your truth-seeking Mormons and you have your functional Mormons. And a lot of us think that we're both, but when push comes to shove, we are one or the other. And
what is that distinction?
Well, so the truth-seeking Mormon is, I'm a Mormon because it's true. I'm part of God's true church. I'm part of the plan of salvation. Yeah, there are things that I don't understand. And yeah, sometimes this church does complicate my life, but I'm ultimately here because it's true. And you can withstand, if things are going well in your life, I think you can withstand a lot of doubts. But you have the functional Mormons who are like, this is the best way to raise a family. I don't know another way to do it. I love the community. This is working for me. And
pragmatic.
Yes. And so when it's really working for you, you can have, 90% of the doubts, you can just have them in the back of your head and they don't bother you because things are going well. But as soon as serious problems start to come into your life, as soon as, your life starts to feel like it's actually worse because you're part of this organization, you start to go, is Reformed Egyptian even a language?
Yeah. Does that chicken scribble actually correlate to anything reasonable?
Yeah. It's like, okay, wait, does like, and I don't want to go off onto like a truth claim podcast because I'm kind of annoyed by those, but I do. It's fun to pepper them in, they're the spice of the podcast. But whenever you make them the whole podcast, it's not a good thing. But then you start to wonder things like, okay, do I have to believe in a literal flood, a literal Adam and Eve? I was taught in seminary that the world was like 6,000 years old, that Pangea was the state of the world before God baptized the earth with the flood. And so when Adam and Eve were walking around in Missouri, there was one continent and it was called Pangea, you know? And then under the example that my seminary teacher used, we had a football player, a guy who he was like a wide receiver or something, but he was injured that season. And he said, look at, I'm going to make up a name because I don't remember his name. He's like, look at Tyler over here. He is really fast, right? And we're like, yeah, Tyler's super fast. We've all seen him run. And it's like, but right now he's not because his leg is broken. And we're like, yeah, poor Tyler can't run that fast right now. And he says, see, the continents are shifting slowly now, but that doesn't mean they were always shifting slowly. They're just like Tyler. They have, a broken leg. Like that was the example that the teacher used. And so he said, in 40 days and 40 nights, or it was 40 days and 40 nights. I know one thing says 100 days, but that doesn't make any sense because it can't be both 40 days and 100 days. I've done the math on that. But so he just said like Pangea shifted in the entire flood, and now it's just slowly drifting, but whatever. Anyways, you start to wonder if any of that makes sense. This is my long-winded point here.
Absolutely. Like once you allow skepticism to enter your brain, it's like, it's like it starts going crazy. It's like, oh, what about this? What about this? Everything is up for debate, right? Once you allow yourself to go that pathway.
Right. Which is actually a good trait in people. As we talked about in the beginning, it's like epistemic humility, like realizing that you could be wrong about things can actually make your life better and can be like the door to wisdom. But that standard is often not held about our deeply held beliefs. And so I don't really know where I'm actually going with that. That's just an observation that I'm making on this conversation. I wanted to plop a couple comments out really quick. We have Moonman. I just really quick, I want to say, and I want to check this with you, Seth. So I was thinking somewhere around the hour mark, we could send out a link and see if anyone wants to talk to both of us. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah.
Perfect. We'll probably do, I don't know if people will call. There aren't that many people live with us right now, but anybody who wants to will be, chatting for like 20 minutes. So, so we have Moonman here. He said, I felt I had revelations and spiritual experiences leading me back to the Mormon church as well. And then I found out the myriad of truth claim issues was a major conundrum before I left the church. Yep. That's funny because I saw that comment come in way before we started having that conversation. But yeah, you're right on the same track as us, Moonman. We got Chris saying, can't listen now, but for sure later. Top content in the post-mo world here. Yes, that is true. You heard it here first. All like 7 of us who are watching this right now, we know what's going on. Thuggy says, when I left, I was a very angry person. So I just distanced myself from it entirely. And I just totally shunned it. Then over the years, I mellowed. Yeah, I think that's a really common experience for a lot of us. I would like to get, Seth, if you want to start thinking about what your anger stage was like in the faith crisis period of your timeline that we're talking about here, and then maybe some of the things that got you past that, and then how that, if we could tie that back in together with your life falling apart in 2019 and the Jordan Peterson stuff. I'm going to read a couple more comments here. Steven says, rebel against God on that one. I know that he's referencing a conversation that we had. We were talking about how sometimes, because we're sentient beings with strong brains, God is actually hoping that we will do our own thing to become individuals. He's kind of a cool Jungian guy. Stephen is. I like him a lot. Yes, he was the true seeking Mormon type. Yes. All right. I just start from scratch and really thought about who I was. Yes. And that's so really quick. That's actually what the point of this channel is. And I feel like that's kind of the sense that I get from some of your channel, Seth, if you want to just tell me what you think about this. But there's a lot of deconstruction post-Mormon content, and that can be fun for a period of our life. But as I made this point in my video about Joe Rogan and Richard Dawkins, it's really easy to like point fingers and say like, that's wrong. I noticed like I was on Jacob Hansen's channel and I had Hayden from Thoughtful Faith on my channel a while ago. And what I realized about that conversation, we were talking about morality with or without God. What I realized about that conversation is whoever is in the hot seat, whoever's being questioned about their beliefs, it goes terribly for them every time. Like, you can have a defense, but eventually it's very hard to ground anything that you're saying in some sort of reality. And so I find the most success in, I don't want to call that a debate, but it kind of is a debate. I find the most success from like an atheistic perspective is I can't ground it, and I don't think you can either, and I don't think anyone can. It's the people who think they can ground it in something that are, it's just a little bit more of like the less you know, the more you know, you don't know. Sure. So what do you think about this rebuilding thing, that, bringing this back to your angry phase, bringing this back to how you got over the angry phase? Talk to me about all of that.
Sure. Yeah, like I think after leaving the church, I was just really triggered by the concept of God, and I just kind of wanted to distance myself completely. And I'm like, this is just too much. I felt like God had sabotaged me. I had so many like miraculous type stuff that I still had a high probability for God's existence. He was just a jerk who led me into a bad path. I was like,
yeah.
So I kind of distanced myself. I didn't, I just kind of, slowly, as I worked through my life, I would kind of slowly have to think and rebuild. It was very a subconscious process for a couple years. It was not active. And then it started to become, I started to engage with some of the philosophy a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to want to defend, like my belief in God kept dropping. And so I'm like, I want to be able to defend my current position. And so I started investigating that. And then it just kind of became a rabbit hole that it was an inexhaustible source of investigation for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of it was I started going into this, listening to YouTube atheist debates online. I was trying to get familiar with this space. I was like, I'm getting closer to becoming an atheist. What's going on here? And one debate in particular really frustrated me, which was Sam Harris debating William Lane Craig on objective morality.
Okay.
That debate pretty much spawned my entire efforts in building a meta-ethical theory for objective morality. Because I was kind of pissed off that it didn't seem like Sam Harris was doing a good enough job to build out his objective morality. I'm like, someone needs to help Sam. Like, I felt he was on the right track, but it needed to be fleshed out better.
So, what is your? I've seen your Is Ought video. I've read a couple of your blog posts. That one in particular, it really stood out to me as like brilliant, but like extra, like, I don't know how to say it. Like, you know how Little Caesars has like the extra most bestest, like, this is a terrible analogy. I'm not trying to compare your blog to $5 pizza.
I'm not super familiar with Little Caesars. So this is not the best analogy for me.
This is a terrible analogy. I should cut this whole part. No, I think that might be one of the most brilliant things that I've seen in a long time. It's really good.
I'm endlessly flattered by your compliments.
But so what, if you were going to support Sam in his quest to, build out objective morality, what is it about objective morality that you think is achievable? I have a hard time believing that that's an achievable thing that subjective agents can achieve. But also, what's your best case for objective morality post God, right? Because you're not coming at this from this is grounded in God at all.
Nope. Yeah, this is purely atheistic.
Yeah.
So, as you might be able to predict, I'm going to go the Jordan Peterson route and say, what do you mean by objective?
Okay. Yes. Very
Right,
smart.
right.
Yeah. So I'll go along. I mean, objective. It's something that is like a standard that is outside of our mind. So if human beings didn't exist on Earth, there is some form of standard that our brain isn't directly related to.
Okay, yeah. So the easy answer, or the simplest, shortest, sweetest answer is game theory.
Uh-huh.
Game theory is the standard, and game theory is external to minds, right? So just a really quick introduction to game theory. Game theory is the study of strategies and how to win a game, and they've applied it to evolutionary psychology. There's a very common strategy is like tit for tat morality, where if you hurt me, then I hurt you, and if you hurt me a lot, then I hurt you a lot. It's kind of a revenge morality, where revenge is good because that balances out our behaviors to make to force cooperation. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. Robert Sapolsky. I don't know if he has a
Oh,
great series of lectures at Stanford that are on YouTube for free. Everybody, you should watch Robert. Right when you're done with Seth's is ought video, you got to move over to like, what's it called? Evolutionary. No, it's behavioral biology. That's what the course is called. Yeah. Fucking brilliant. So good. So good. But he goes over game theory in yes, right after the is ought video. But I think it's episode 1 or 2 of his class that he goes over game theory. But yeah, continue.
I meant I second what you're saying in that highly recommend, should be required learning for everyone.
Oh, it's so good.
So game theory is like it's not inside, like game theory is something that exists based on the structure of reality. And then our minds are like trying to latch on to the best strategy, right? Like in the game of chess is a simple analogy.
Yes.
Like the best chess strategy is not necessarily inside our heads, but our heads are trying to latch on to that external standard of what we ought to do.
Right. And the strategy is produced by knowing what the rules are.
Right. And calculating, deducing properly based on reality.
Now, to what degree, because there's an opponent in chess, right? And so to what degree does maybe the best chess strategy work every time, or does it depend on who you're playing and what strategy they've chosen?
Oh, absolutely. Like, yeah, there's an element of like there's variety to what the correct answer is. The environment changes, the isness of the environment changes, and the correct ought also changes in response to the environment changing.
Okay, so would you consider then the environment includes your opponent, right? The environment includes the person you're playing against, or the environment is the board and the rules. It's so interesting that the rules are part of reality, right? The rules of chess, the way that the pawns are allowed to move starts to become a part of the environment, they're just fascinating.
So I kind of want to do a little tangent that I've been thinking about lately.
Do it.
But I'm afraid it's going to make me sound a little kooky.
Now you definitely should do it.
So I've been kind of struggling with theories of consciousness. I have a bias against panpsychism because that seems crazy and kooky. And so I very much lean towards emergentism, like physicalism, materialism, emergentism.
Yeah.
But the more I think about like the emergence of consciousness, the more it bothers me. I feel like the problem is like it's I think the simplest way to articulate is there's a building block problem, right? Water can emerge into rivers. Water can emerge into oceans. Each of these things has interesting behaviors. Water can emerge into a cloud. Clouds have interesting emergent behaviors. All of these interesting things happen. But if you break it down into the building blocks, it's water, or H2O. We can kind of trace the phenomena to the building block. And the thing that bothers me about consciousness is no one has a theory about the building blocks of conscious qualia experience. what is the building block of redness? What is the building block of the taste of chocolate? You know, these things, it's almost incomprehensible to imagine a building block for these things. And like within the laws of physics, where are they?
Yeah, that is a good question, and I don't think that sounds kooky at all. I think that
the next part is kooky.
Wait, do you have an answer to this?
So I'm starting to deduce a very kooky framework.
Okay.
That it's kind of panpsychic. So it kind of forces us down towards panpsychism, because panpsychism gives you the building blocks.
Right.
And so I guess within the basic structure of reality, you've got particles, which could be metaphorically the isness of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got the attraction, the forces, right? The natural forces, which are the oughts of reality. Mm-hmm. So at base reality, you've got the is-ought interchange between particles and forces.
I'm not smart enough to go anywhere here with you, unfortunately, but that is... I wish that I was, but so let me think about this.
I can make it more kooky if that will make it more clear.
You know what? It might make it more clear, but let me try and... No, you make it more kooky, and I think that you'll probably jumpstart my brain a little bit here.
Okay, so one of well-being is a framework that I really appreciate in terms of objective morality. So I have my metaethical framework builds a relationship between well-being and game theory, where both of these are objective features of reality, right? Well-being is a real aspect of reality, right? We've got pleasure, we've got pain. These are ontologically real. They exist. They're hypothetically measurable, right? Then what's the building blocks of well-being? What's the building blocks of pleasure and pain?
Would that be, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong here, but I always use the example of like, because your body was not made to eat rocks, like there's this sounds like such a dumb thing for me to say, because the body was not meant to eat rocks, but no, like there's a...
So I'm going to connect this. I've got two different streams that I'm planning to connect. So I'm not expecting you to have an answer, because this is nobody knows the answers to these questions.
I'm just throwing shit at the wall here because you know, this is outside of like territory that this is what... Okay, so connect the streams here. Cross the streams for me, Seth.
So this is the kooky conclusion. Maybe in terms of like atoms, right? You've got these particles. Maybe the bonding between materials is equivalent to pleasure, and the severing of a bond is equivalent to pain. So that's the building block. At base reality, we've got the building blocks of pleasure and pain. And so when you build an organism, you can kind of guide. So let's say the organism, you want to feel pain in the face of danger, and you want to feel pleasure in the face of rewards. And so you can guide a biological system of severed bonds to create pain, and to create a system of creating bonds to create a pleasure response. And maybe that's maybe part of this base reality bubbles up into consciousness.
Wow. I that did make more sense. The kookier you made it, the more it made sense. Where it's like we like the experience of things coming together, and we dislike the experience of them going apart. To a degree, I wonder, because it would be interesting to find a way to to incorporate some of our previous conversation, which was essentially like the pragmatism of believing something makes it exist in your brain. I remember there was this experiment that I had to research for a project, where I'll try and describe the experiment, and then we'll probably try and take a few calls. We got Latter-day Skeptic and Before the Crow's Nest going wild in the chat, by the way. Thanks, guys. They're particularly interested. I think they want to talk to you about what you just said. But so there was this experiment where 3 people met in a room, and the person guiding the experiment said, you're going to go in 3 separate rooms, and you're going to play simulated catch with one another. You're going to get on the computer, and you have 2 buttons. You can throw and you can catch, and you just, you pick who you're going to throw it to, and you throw it, and then, but the experiment was set up so that as soon as they were in separate rooms, they were playing with a computer that would make all of them think that they were immediately cut out of the game. So they would throw the ball once, they would get the ball thrown to them once, and then after they threw it, it was between 2 computers that never once threw it again to them. And these people experienced betrayal and physical pain. Like
Wow.
they experienced the part of their brain that they were monitoring that was lighting up was the pain, like it was the pain part of the brain. And it just goes to show that, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that psychological things are as real to you as pain is, obviously. Like that shouldn't be like a jump. That's not like an earth-shattering thing, but it's proven. And that, where are the building blocks for that? It's just happening. You know what I mean? They're neurons firing, but it is happening somewhere, and it's based on something that A, isn't even real, and B, double isn't real because it's computers, and it's not a real game, and it's not a real ball, and none, it's all projected. And so, man, that I'll find that, and I mean, it might be a little hard to find, but I'll find it and put it in the description. It's like a 5-minute video, but it's very, very interesting.
That's a very powerful way to show how perception shapes your reality in some way.
Yes. And there was this, and then, to a degree, so perception starts to build your environment, right? So like, you now have to act like, if that's just a pattern that's going to happen, right? That's now built into your model of reality. So what do you do in the face of 2 computers that you think are real that are rejecting you? You know what I mean? Now that's now a part of the game of chess that we have to factor into everything. So, oh man, this is why nobody can have answers to I mean, this is why it's so complicated, but this is why it's so fun to think about.
Absolutely.
This is why it is so fun to think about. Okay, I'm going to copy this. So this is a question. This is a question that I kind of ask everybody. And while we're waiting for some calls, I'm going to ask you, when was the last time that you feel like you felt what your Mormon self would have called the spirit? The most recent time. And the link to call in is live now.
I think it was probably yesterday.
Okay.
It doesn't happen that often, but maybe every other month I'll have, if I meditate, it happens more. I kind of go in and out. I have a hard time keeping consistent with meditation. It's a lot easier to achieve if I'm doing that. But like very beautiful stories of self-sacrifice trigger the spirit easily. It's like that type of transcendent love is just like, it overwhelms you with positive emotion. Yeah.
I remember, this is by no means the most recent time I felt this, but I remember I saw Rogue One in theaters. This is a while ago, but when it became evident to everybody that they were not going to they weren't going to make it off of the planet they were on or whatever, but they could get the that little thing of Leia talking, they could get that up and out. And the question that I don't think was ever explicitly asked, but it was very obvious to the audience. It was like, is this worth trying? We're going to be dead for whatever the result is. And it was a resounding yes. It was like, of course we keep going. You know what I mean? It's such a human gut response of like, of course, like the tribe will live on. and to a degree, I live as long as the tribe lives, you know?
Absolutely.
And so
Yeah.
I remember in theaters, it was a long time ago, but I was out of the church by this point. And I remember like feeling like tears might come out of my eyes, just thinking like, humans are fucking cool, man. We love, you know, and love is strong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man. All right. Let's see if anybody should we catch up on the craziness that happened between Latter-day Skeptic or Forrest and Christopher, or made some interesting points here. He said perception and environment entail each other. When we suspend our disbelief and critical mind, things can appear as very real, even if they're not. Hence, we cry at movies. Yeah. And have revelations. Yes, yes, yes. All right. If we don't get any calls, I'm okay with that. I honestly never expect to get calls.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's eating dinner. You take your time, man. You don't have to call in. I was wondering, I don't know if this is a bad idea or not. I have an idea. If I'm in the middle of a live thinking that something that I want to do is a bad idea, I should definitely not do it. Let's see here. All right. So let's see. Let's wrap up. I have more questions that I wrote down as we were talking. So let's do this. Bedtime in Rochester, New York. Hey, enjoy Rochester. That's very close to where my religion started. Okay. So this voice in your head.
Yeah.
What you used to call the Holy Ghost. We kind of started by talking about this. So I think of this now as kind of like the average of all the ways that I've been treated, the way that I've treated myself over time. I think of this voice in my head as kind of the average of that can change as I change the way I speak to myself. I'm interested. What do you think about that? And how would you describe what you think the voice in your head is? And then we're going to let Steven in because he is here.
Oh, should I go quick then?
No, I mean, take your time. Steven, you can hear me, right? Just give me a thumbs up in the camera. Okay, cool. We're just going to, as soon as Seth is done with this answer, I'm going to let you in.
Okay, so yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me. That is also how I kind of frame it. Like earlier in my story, I told you how God was like saying, the voice in my head was saying, you must obey your father, right? A very patriarchal, authoritative hierarchy of priesthood. Like that voice is obviously coming from a Mormon paradigm. You know what I mean? And I think deconstructing that paradigm, it's probably a voice from the subconscious. And if you build your ideology into your subconscious, it's going to give you an answer that is from that perspective. So yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense.
Okay. Very nice. While I let Steven on, if you want to go ahead and read this is a pretty good question, actually. It says, Seth, what do you think about the idea that mass is the building block of is and want is the building block of ought?
When you say want, are you talking about forces? Because I think I was agreeing with you earlier that materials and forces are kind of the is ought building blocks. But
beautiful. Steven, how are you, man? You are on with us. Can you hear us okay?
Hey, how's it going?
Not bad. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been. So this has been a very interesting conversation. You've been talking about your whole story about how you've really been feeling like God's been leading you down the wrong path with this whole marriage thing. And that is a very crazy story right there, because typically we think about God should be leading us in the right direction, but I think you definitely got to go with your own gut on that one. because we were talking about there are probably moments when you should be rebelling against God.
Right.
Otherwise.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
so Seth, this is this is the guy who made that comment. We
Gotcha.
Stephen was on my channel like what, a month ago?
about, yeah.
Yeah. And he had this cool thing that he said. He's like, he described post-theism perfectly. He was like, at some point, our job is to leave the nest and fly on our own. And that's what God actually wants for us. But sorry, I interrupted to add context. What were you about to say?
No, that's totally fine. I just want to get Seth's opinion on that, and then I wanted to bring in one more thing.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. I love that concept. Like from the theist mindset, you're taught to never question God. But there's a very valid question that you're bringing up is like, how, like, if God is evil, then we should rebel against him. And so what conditions require rebellion against God? Like, what a powerful concept.
Well, not that I wouldn't say not that God is evil. I think the concept of evil is something else entirely that is eternally existing apart from God. But essentially, whether not God is evil or not, I would say there should be moments in your life that you should rebel.
That seems valid as well, I think. Well, what if the good God is guiding you down a good path? Should you rebel against a good path?
That's a personal decision I think you should make. But I think sometimes God definitely puts us in situations where he probably wants us to rebel and simply choose our own path. I think there are many different good paths. I think there's this one analogy where it's like we're all going to the top of the mountain, but there are multiple ways to get to the top of the mountain, kind of a thing. And so
all roads.
I don't think there's just the one good path. I think there are many good paths.
So you think God would intentionally set you up for a situation where he wants you to become independent of his path and develop your independence from him, kind of?
Yeah, something like that.
So are you a theist then?
I am, yeah. But I think that's where I wanted to bring up what I think is the most compelling argument for atheism. That I feel like you were almost getting there, but you didn't. Have you heard of the bicameral mind?
I think I've heard of it. I don't know what it is.
Is that like the elephant and the rider, or
no? It's not.
Okay,
it's if you've seen Westworld, you know what I'm talking about. That is a very interesting show. So the bicameral mind is this theory where God is a product of the subconscious mind, where original humans, when they heard talking in their heads, they thought it was God speaking to them. And so that's where the idea of God came from, is original humans not knowing their subconscious mind talking to them, thinking that it's God. And then sort of like you would have like a king giving you commands. He was the alpha male, right? But then when he died, you would still hear his voice in your head. And so you're like, has the king become a god? And you would sort of like still listen to that voice.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah,
it does. We were kind of talking about this right as you were actually coming on, Stephen, about how maybe this voice is it's a conditioned average. You know, it's the way that our parents spoke to us growing up. It's the way that we felt society spoke to us growing up. You know, our teachers, all of that built this average. And they say you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with. What if by changing who you are spending your time with, you can actually change the type, the way that you interact with yourself, right? Because you are an I and a me sometimes. You know, I think Eckhart Tolle had this moment in his life where he thought, like, I think that I should end it all. I don't think that I want to live anymore. And the words that he said were, I don't think I can live with myself. And then suddenly he said, wait a second, who is I and who is myself? Which one of me can't live with the other one? You know? And so it's like, there's this voice that we interact with. And I'm curious, what's your opinion of the idea that we personified it and we said it was God, but it really is something that's just a little more, just kind of a product of growing up in a society as social creatures.
I think it's definitely a big possibility. I'm not sure there's much I can add on to that other than there's I don't know. Suddenly I'm thinking of the collective unconscious, where like all of these voices we have in our head just compound into a universal voice that we all share, that sort of came down through evolutionary psychology, kind of an idea. Where we all have these similar beliefs of morality. We perceive life in a similar way. We all kind of go on a similar hero's journey, if you will.
Totally.
And I think so. Society plays a pretty big part in that.
Yeah, it would be interesting if you could find a way to grab people from different cultures and figure out what their voice is like, and I mean, just somebody from Australia, somebody from India, somebody from China, somebody from Argentina, and just, how does your voice speak to you? And then, I don't know, cross reference that with, are they from a collectivist culture? Are they from an individualistic culture? Like, really, really do this thing. That would be fun. So sorry, really quick.
I do have some thoughts about that, but
okay.
take your time.
I was just going to ask Stephen, well, maybe I should say this question because I'm moving topics. And anybody else who wants to call in, feel free. But until then, we're going to chat with Stephen. So what was your thought, Seth?
Two thoughts. One, I think it's very interesting that, Stephen, you were saying that this collective psychology, this unconscious God, is one good argument for atheism. I feel like a lot of religiosity is based on spiritual epistemology. And so like my intuition is exactly in alignment with yours, is that if you can debunk the spiritual experiences, that really hurts theism.
Right.
Because people don't believe Mormonism because they think that these empirical facts are true. They believe it because of the Holy Ghost and et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean?
Right.
That was my first thought. My second thought is this evolution of a God, right? My understanding of neuroscience is that our subconscious is kind of in charge, and that our conscious mind is kind of a problem solver that satisfies the desires of the subconscious. And so in a sense, I think we often identify as our conscious prefrontal cortex, and the voice of the subconscious is actually the boss. And so subconsciously, it feels like this is God. Like this subconscious voice, he's actually in charge. We're along for the ride. We actually serve him. Like evolutionarily, I think it's true. Our conscious mind serves the God that is the unconscious.
Yeah, that's the elephant analogy that I was asking about earlier, where, the guy on top of the elephant thinks that he's controlling it, but really the elephant is just walking wherever he wants to walk. And then the man on top says, yes, I'm doing all of this. I am in charge of this great beast. I wanted to throw a thought at both of you. Christopher is shouting fake in the chat. I don't know what this means.
Be more specific, Chris.
He says fake. Let's see. Oh, wait. The subconscious and the unconscious are traps. They're just like another me, self, and observer. Okay. So I want to talk about the evolution of the voice. I have a theory about the evolution of monotheism coming as a result of polytheism, because you don't have,
I got a whole book on that.
Oh, great. So all of us are going to have our ideas, our thoughts on this topic. And then we'll probably, if nobody else calls in, we'll probably call it right around the 135-minute mark. Try usually not to go over 90 minutes, but this one went fast. So I'll describe this quickly and then let both of you give some thoughts. But it seems like in the Greek and Roman days, they had a god for every phenomenon. They had a god for drunkenness, and they had a god for war, and they had a god for love, and slowly, and all of them, actually, this is an interesting side note, but all of them were the children of the god of time, which is wild. I think about that all the time.
Uranus.
All
Wait, no,
the-
that's Kronos.
time.
No, it
God
was
of time.
Kronos.
Yeah.
The idea that, because for a long time I thought that God was nothing more than the personification of time and our interaction with it, and I thought it was so interesting that all of these kind of sub gods were the children of time. I thought that was, a wildly weird coincidence, if nothing else. But so you have all of these gods who are in charge of one thing, and you had this, just like you had it in Greece and in for the Roman people. You also had it for the Native American people who were living here. You had it for the Mayans. You had it for the Aztecs. You had it for all these groups of people. And it logically makes sense to me that as one tribe needs to take over another tribe, they need to share some of their gods. So they need to say, hey, your top god, he does this, and mine is, in charge of him, but yours is still really good, but mine actually does his job too. So your top god is actually my god. And you go about condensing gods as tribes are taking over until eventually you're left with one omnipotent, all-knowing, all-loving god, which Zeus, no one would ever think for a moment that Ares or Zeus were all-knowing, all-loving, and all-powerful. They were just elements. They were just things that you experienced until God was built into almost this Tower of Babel, like, everything and everything all the time, everywhere. This is God now. And it just makes sense to me that God would evolve to become more and more powerful as tribes are taking over one another. So that was kind of long-winded, but I'm curious. We'll start with you, Seth, and then go down to you, Stephen. What do you think about that? We're so off topic now. I love it.
Yeah, I think that that makes a lot of sense to me. That's very much a Jordan Peterson argument.
It sounds like one, yeah.
And I think it makes a lot of sense. And it to add a little bit more of Jordan Peterson's flavor to it, there's the concept of hierarchy of values. I think
Yes.
Nietzsche was kind of one who kind of talked about that a lot. And I think Jordan Peterson talks about how monotheism is an attempt at making a hierarchy of the values within one God. So like the monotheistic God of Abraham, he's not just a God of justice. He's not just a God of love. He's not just a God of mercy. He's a God of all those things, but there's kind of a hierarchy, but it's vague. Was like maybe love's at the top and mercy is above justice because he forgives. They're trying to play with the hierarchy within one God, right? So
Yeah,
even more nuance to the concept.
Right. What do you think about all that, Stephen?
So I've been thinking a lot about so you got all these gods, and then you just figure out that they share a bunch of qualities with these other gods. It almost kind of sounds like what the Romans did, where they just adapted Greek gods, and then when Christianity was a thing, they just adapted the Christian God, which is a very, very good thing to do when you're trying to take over other people. Is just to adapt the God and be like, hey, we got the same gods. Makes it seem like you're more trustworthy.
Yeah, totally.
But I almost feel like an argument against it could be with the individual cultures themselves. They still had many gods. They still had these many ideas of God. And so I think another factor you got to factor in is warring gods. One of my friends this is one of his theories, is that all these gods were just warring against each other, and the God of Christianity is just the one that came out on top. And in a way, that's sort of true, because in this book I got here called Yahweh and the Gods and Goddesses of Canaan, it's by a Old Testament Oxford professor named John Day, and his whole thesis is that there were all these gods of Canaan. There was El, there were his sons Yahweh and Baal, and just kind of as time went on, Yahweh just started to compound all of these characteristics of Baal and of his father El and all of these other gods. And it sort of started off where it was just kind of like Yahweh was the supreme God who came in and spoke to Moses. And then near the end of the Babylonian captivity, is when it went complete monotheism. And so I think that's an interesting thesis right there.
Yeah.
And it's all because Yahweh, who started off as this storm and war god, came in, and which explains all the wars that are going on in the Old Testament, because they were worshiping a war god. And so that he just eventually came out on top, because he was the one that, apparently got the Israelites out of Egypt, and so he's the one that everybody was focusing their attention on, and he just won this war of the gods, and so that's how they got to being monotheistic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a quick comment which ties all of this back to my meta-ethical theory.
Beautiful. I love it, Seth. What is it?
So I tend to think that the concepts of God or religious frameworks in general
Mhm.
are personifications of game theory. So we've got this objective we've got objective morality, which is what's the best game theory.
Right.
All of these groups, they're trying to latch on to the best strategy, and they're inventing a religion, which is a system of strategies for the group. And they're experimenting and fighting with each other, and kind of like, maybe there's a good strategy over here, we're going to mix it in with ours. And
Yes.
the concept of God is this evolving game theory.
Yes, that was brilliant, dude. I want to end on that, because that's probably like, you just gave me so much to think about. Stephen, can you tell all the people who are watching and will eventually be watching in the next couple days, where they can find your channel? And then
you can just, my channel is This Saints Theory, just right here on YouTube, and I also got a website, thissaintstheory.org.
Nice.
So you can check those out. You want me to just? It's just my channel name. So
yeah, I'll add it to the description. I just wanted you to mention it for the people who are just listening and not reading. So yeah, thank you for hopping on, Stephen. We still need to have a part 2 at some point, but we'll make that
would be cool.
Yeah. Okay. Take care, my friend.
You too. Good to meet you, Seth. I'll have to check you out too. You're a YouTube channel as well?
Yes, you have to check them out.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right, I'm gonna drop Steven here. All right, I'm gonna read a couple more comments, and then I'm gonna give Seth a chance to say whatever he wants to say. Dude, that game theory personified thing is pretty good. That is very good. The whole punch back hard one time and then forgive. We already speak about it like it's a person. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
That is
religion
cool.
builds nuance into it, right? The systems of forgiveness. Like, you have to earn it.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean?
Holy shit. All right. I saw somebody mention the word Zarathustra, and so I had to come back and read their comments. So this person, I don't know who this is, but thank you for being here. Today I heard there was a god of stupidity also, and many other minor gods that didn't do anything heroic or awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I could see that. Subconscious is the master. Between the conscious and the servant, what part of the mind is the mediator, redeemer, savior between the two? Yeah, I mean, maybe cutting the brain in half is not enough. Maybe this is why Stephen mentioned that one culture will have a whole bunch of different values, but one person will have a whole bunch of different values. The internal battle is always there. So to say that cultures have yes, cultures have conflicting values, because cultures are made up of people who also have conflicting values.
Right.
Let's see.
I have thoughts about that comment. Go
ahead.
So I actually wrote about this on my blog's homepage. My brand of philosophy is called Transcendent Philosophy, and Carl Jung actually answers this question, and he calls it the transcendent function. The transcendent function is the part of your brain, or the part of psychology, that mediates between the two. And Jordan Peterson obviously talks about Jung a lot, and he talks about how Jordan Peterson is trying to navigate what part of us is the real us, and Jordan Peterson lands on the transcendent function. the part of our psychology that is guiding transformation. Like we've got these two things, we have to reconcile them, and then like there's a conclusion. Some people like to think of consciousness as collapsing the wave function. There's a contradiction, we collapse it into a decision, and that transformation is how we reconcile.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, that's, man, we're definitely having more chats, you and I, just so you know, we're doing this more. This person said, Zarathustra, which most people know by the title of one of Nietzsche's books. Yeah, Nietzsche's very hard to spell. I spell it wrong every time. Was a religion from 6 centuries before Christianity. Pretty much has a loving God. He made another God who went off the rails and became the evil god, and he's represented by a dragon or a serpent. And there was a few other similarities. Gilgamesh is also a flood story about us that is super similar to Christianity. And that the guy was warned, built a boat, saved his family, and a few of each animal. They are coincidentally very similar. Some of the holidays, same with the holidays Christianity has. Yes. Yeah, the Epic of Gilgamesh, that was something that I learned like 2 years after my faith crisis, that I was like, oh wow, this is pretty damn cool, actually. This is the comment that came in right after you said that God is a personified game theory. This person wants to know your YouTube channel name, and that's a perfect segue. So Steven says you have a video of Naruto. Of course, I'm subscribing.
Nice.
So yes, you two would get along about Naruto. He was telling me, we were talking about some of our favorite. Hey, Christopher is here. Okay, are you good for like another 10 minutes, Seth?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. Then we're adding Christopher. Sorry, I don't know if you were ready or not, but I just added you in because I saw. I mean, yeah, you're here. I haven't actually talked to you. We've gone back and forth in comments, but I haven't actually talked to you before, so I'm excited to talk to you as well. Yeah, I'm gonna try a different. I'm gonna try a different thing here, so we're all a little bigger. What's on your mind, man?
Well, first of all, I loved your interview with Hayden. Great conversation. Everyone needs to go listen to that.
Thank you.
And now Seth. Yes. I still need to finish your video, and your style's amazing. You already know I love your stuff. Okay, but I'm here for not just me, because I'm sure there's other people. I'm just here to admit it. Okay, explain it to me like I'm 5. Okay, the Michael Scott thing. What are Forrest and y'all talking about? What do you mean about like wants as the building blocks of pleasures and knots and ises and all that? Give me like I'm 5.
Okay.
After you explain it, he's going to say, now explain it to me like I'm 2. I'm just kidding. I'm going to say that.
I'm going to try my best. Okay. So basically, like in my blog, I kind of differentiate between 2 styles of defining aughts. Like one is authoritative and one is just like an impulse. It's like a drive, right? And so like authoritative aughts,
is that different than intuition?
They're on the same pathway.
Okay, continue. Sorry.
Yeah. So a lot of people like say, well, there's no God that's giving us an authoritative ought, therefore moral relativism. And then my perspective would be, no, because we have biological imperatives, and those biological imperatives bubble up into psychological imperatives, which are intuitions, and all of those can be considered oughts. If I'm hungry, I ought to eat. That's a biological imperative, a biological ought, right? And so there's an ecosystem of oughts where everyone's oughts are competing with each other, and like the best oughts come to the top as the best game theoretic strategies. And so then you have to go from the biology down deeper. Where do these biological oughts come from? Then we have the building block problem of consciousness, and that's where I get kooky a little bit. I have no idea what the answer is, but yeah.
Okay. Now
you're making me want a cookie. Is that what you're saying? You're saying
I also would like a cookie.
You say kooky exactly how my 1.5-year-old says cookie. He walks to the pantry and he says, "Cookie?"
Okay, no, I like that.
Did that work?
Yeah, no, it does. And I like that Forrest said that he doesn't even know what he means either, because
Yeah.
do we?
Do
I had
any
a
of us know what we
question.
need?
I can't remember it though. Thank you for the rundown. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That makes more sense. And now I'm gonna keep that in mind as I finish your op video.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good video, man. It is a very good video. Both of you, okay, I have a question for both of you because both of you have YouTube channels. What's the favorite video that you have made, each of you? Or a video that it felt good to get it off your chest and just like, okay, that exists now.
Oh, that's such a good question. Do you have an answer to that while I think?
I'll give my answer. I have one about what the atonement means to me as an ex-Mormon. It's about like, it starts with a clip from Fight Club. And it's like, this is your pain. You live in the moment, you experience your pain, you transcend, like the atonement is just a metaphor about a guy who was so in the moment that he saved everyone. Like, and we've gone deeper into that a little bit today when we talked about I wrote it down. You can choose to suffer on behalf of your loved ones. I remember that.
Yeah, I like
so and you actually said it in about 30 seconds better than my whole video, but that's the one that I was like, it feels good to get that one off my chest. What for each of you, what are your videos that it just felt good to say it and have it be said?
I'm ready. If you're not, I think mine was the philosophy of suffering video, which I alluded to at the beginning, where I kind of give the rundown of my existential crisis. That was kind of therapeutic and cathartic to kind of get that story off my chest, that big burden that I had to go through.
Yeah.
That was one of the first videos I watched. So yes, good one. My videos aren't very interesting. I don't put a whole lot of effort into them. But a lot of them are based off of what I write. So I guess the one that was the best to get off my chest was years ago. And it was a chapter in my first book, the third or fourth chapter called, and it was just called, Why is the Atonement Necessary? And it goes down all the deep dives of like the building blocks of the universe and intelligence theory and the ontological metaphysical questions of Mormonism. Like, why does it matter? Like, why did he have to come here and be so brutalized and all that story? And why did we have to learn that as 5-year-olds in primary? But it's all sort of disguised as also a message to the church and the ex-Mormon community, because I like to layer my things in like threes all the time. But that one felt really good because in the end, it helped answer all of my big existential questions of what's up with the whole eternal family stuff when you leave the church and all that existential wondering. And that essay helped kind of guide me there. There was something else bigger that got me there, but that was a good marker for me. And I wrote that in like 2019, 2020.
Okay. Very cool. It sounds like 2019 and 2020 were big years for the three of us. Probably true for a lot more people, but
yeah.
Seth mentioned it.
The stars were in alignment,
Yes.
The astrological signs.
Mercury was in reverse cowgirl, I believe. Oh man, it was either that or what is it, Gatorade? No, I know it's retrograde. I know. Oh man. So I mean, any other thoughts? You've been along for most of the ride, Christopher. What I mean, anything else that you've had on your mind lately, or that we talked about that you thought was worth asking questions about? Anything like that?
My short-term memory is terrible. That way I'd have to pull up the chat and have it sparked in a way. But I got on here to ask the main thing that was burning, which is kind of a clarification of the odds. Because, speaking of Forrest, I watch his channel a bit, and I've watched Thoughtful Faith, Jacob's channel forever.
Yeah.
Because I'm that guy. I still like to watch. I'm sympathetic to the Mormons more than I am like an angry ex-Mormon.
Right.
So I still follow up on. And anyway, but and Jacob talks a lot about the aughts and morality and stuff. And
Right.
I like to be vague and annoying to him in his chat, and I do that often. But sometimes it's interesting to just hear y'all chat about it.
Yeah.
And I wanted a more simple clarification on one thing that I heard tonight. So thanks for letting me hear.
Yeah. So in the comment, because I was just on Jacob's channel, and you said something in one of the comments. Actually, you said like a long, like just bullet points of things that you agreed and disagreed with, which
I do that.
A lot of people, I love stuff like that because it helps me like get into the conversation, especially when like I was part of the conversation, you know.
Yeah.
But I responded to that one and I said, you and I need to do an episode together, and then it disappeared. I don't know if it's because I put my email account in there. I don't know if YouTube automatically flagged it as spammy because of that, but
that could do it. Yeah.
I definitely want to have you on at some point because I see you popping all over with Chris's stuff. With I've watched a bunch of your videos, and I think it would be fun to talk to you.
Yeah, let's do it.
Where can people find you, Christopher?
Before the Crow's Nest, if you just type that in Google, I'm like the only thing that comes up. But ChristopherSchenefeld.com is my website, and everything I write and paint goes on there.
Cool. What where does the name Before the Crow's Nest?
I just told you I layer everything I write in like threes.
Right.
It's complicated. We'll talk about that when we.
Okay, we'll talk about that when you
take over Seth's episode.
All right. Fair enough. Awesome, Christopher. Thank you for hopping on. I think we're probably gonna we're probably all gonna hop off right now. So Seth, tell people where they can find you, and then I'll end the broadcast here.
Yeah, my YouTube channel is called Transcendent Philosophy. And on the YouTube, you can go into the information. There's a place, the About page or whatever, will give you links to my blog, Facebook, Instagram, stuff like that. So if you want to go find, I'm trying to convert all of my blog articles into videos, and I've only gotten halfway through or something. So there's more stuff out there that I'm trying to develop. And so, yeah, definitely check that out.
That's awesome. I really like that format. Jonathan Streeter was doing that. He had his blog, and he would just read an article and then take calls, and I loved that format. I thought it was a brilliant format. My problem is I don't think at all by writing. I'm like a totally like it happens as I communicate with people. Like it has to be born. It's the baby of this conversation is all the new ideas that I have that I'll flesh out over the next couple of weeks. So
Sure.
But I'm always impressed by people like you and Jonathan who just like, and Christopher, clearly he's written books, but people who just like put things down onto pages.
Yeah. To talk about the purpose of my YouTube channel, the purpose of my blog, is called Transcendent Philosophy, and kind of the vision that I had, right? The vision of, the meaning crisis, right? I'm suffering. I want to do something meaningful. Right. I look around me and there's division everywhere, right? We've got political division. We've got ideological, religious division. We've got geopolitical division. And it seems like the potential for suffering is everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had been experiencing transcending out of these problems myself.
Yeah.
And I started to get this vision of, if there was a path for transcendence, maybe we could collectively transcend out of these problems. And so that was my vision, to see if there's a pathway to like this emergent world peace and emergent utopia, if we can all kind of fix our own problems and let that bubble up.
Yeah. That is a very worthy goal. I'm right there with you. I think, getting people on the same page, getting people to just cross the aisle, have conversations, realize our bare humanity, it inspires something in us to pull others out of the mud. And really we can, just like the the things in the grocery aisle that you talked about at the beginning. They can like we can have the intention of making the suffering better, and we can. It takes intent. Yeah, and we didn't even talk about intent today, but I think intent is probably like one of the top. We'll have to talk about it another time. I don't want to open up another can of worms, but I love that. I'm very, very grateful to you, Seth, for coming on with me. I messed up the time a little bit on this one.
No, don't worry.
So I appreciate like crazy that you gave me almost 2 hours of your day. And I hope that people really like this. Again, everybody go check out Seth's channel. I'll put it in the description. Also check out This Saint's Theory and Before the Crow's Nest. And thank you all for being here. I hope that you all have a good day. I am ending the broadcast now. Here we go.
It's been a pleasure.